Okay, a couple of questions before we wrap up. Brandon Elkins, what percentage of owners would take full advantage of no salary cap if the cap were to be removed? Are there any teams that would relish the chance to buy as close to an approximation of a Super Bowl roster as possible? I'll believe it if it ever happens. Remember when they had an uncapped year in 2010, the year before the lockout? The Cowboys and Washington eventually got in trouble, and it was clearly collusion. They got in trouble. They lost salary cap space after the fact because they treated the uncapped year as uncapped. Now, since then, I don't know that the Cowboys would really go all in. Jerry Jones says you'd be surprised at the size of the check that I would write if it would guarantee me a Super Bowl win. My theory is we'd be surprised because it's so small, because he continues to drag his feet and cost himself money and do inexplicable things when it comes to taking care of his key players. But I think there would be more teams if we took away the salary cap, because if you take away the cap, you take away the floor. There are more teams that would be happy the floor is gone than there are teams that would be happy the cap is gone. And you would have teams spending less than what they're required to spend under the CBA. You'd have more of those teams than you would have teams blowing it out of the water. And you know what would happen? Some of those teams that would be spending less than what they're currently required to spend, some of those teams would end up being pretty good. Because the lifeblood of your roster is your young players who are paid a restricted amount under the rookie wage scale. And if you just make those guys the centerpiece of your team and you selectively keep some and let some go when they become free agents, and you're doing a good job of drafting and developing, you can get a lot more value out of the cheaper players on your roster, the young cheap players, than you do out of the older ones. So there will be plenty of good teams that are draft and develop, selective in keeping their own free agents. And there would be successful teams who are spending less, far less, than the teams that would be trying to buy their way to a Super Bowl roster. RB Roughnecks, why would the union want someone like Lloyd Howell in the first place? Wouldn't you want someone with NFL experience who has absolutely no ties to 345 Park Avenue? Also, if a prominent figure like Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, J.J. Watt comes out and calls for Howell's dismissal, how does he stay? Look, I've been surprised at how few people have been saying anything. The only former players who have said anything are Chris Long and J.J. Watt. No current player has said a word. And I think what happens in a situation like this, and it's Orwellian manipulation, possibly, but when the questions come from the outside, player leadership, perhaps led by non-player leadership, or at least instigated by non-player leadership, they circle the wagons and we blame the people on the outside. That was the justification they used for the top secret Lloyd Howell hiring process in 2023. We don't want people on the outside influencing our process. We don't want people dividing us. And the irony is a group that is solidified as it relates to media, be that solidified when it comes to dealing with the league. Stand up and say, we'll take a work stoppage to get what we think we deserve. Stand up and say we'll go on strike and we won't cross the picket line. Show some of that solidarity that you direct to the media, mainly to protect the turf of the people who are running the league than to protect each other. Show some of that to the league. JShuck21, how does the NFL collusion case play with Congress and their antitrust exemption? Well, John, this is a great example of what could have been done with that ruling when it came out in January. Because when you have an imbalance in bargaining, where you have owners who will shut the sport down for a year and players who won't miss a game check, you need to use everything else you can to create leverage, to create chaos. So you get the ruling and you have a press conference immediately explaining that you caught the commissioner with his hand in the collusion cookie jar, and you call for the commissioner to resign or be fired, and you call on the Department of Justice Antitrust Division to investigate all the other ways that the NFL is engaging in antitrust violations by virtue of this 32 independent company group that locks arms and works together to help each other. Because the argument would be, if they're violating the antitrust laws as it relates to collusion with respect to players, they're doing it in other ways as well, and they should be investigated. So they have limited antitrust exemptions. There are plenty of areas where they don't have an antitrust exemption. And a strong union with strong leadership would be using the fact that they were caught attempting to collude, urging teams to collude. That would be the ammunition to get Congress to look into what the NFL is doing, to get the Department of Justice to look into what the NFL is doing, and to potentially threaten the antitrust exemptions that currently exist. That's why, it's one of the reasons why the decision to hide the collusion ruling was so surprising. And, you know, the fact that once it came to light that they were hiding this thing, then all of a sudden they're appealing the outcome. Well, I think that says plenty. Two more real quick. From Don Tagner, how do you see the Giants quarterback situation working out? Hey, I look at it this way. If they truly believe in Jackson Dart, traded up into round one to get him, he should be able to beat out Russell Wilson. Based upon what we saw of Russell Wilson the last 3 years, last year, last 2 years, Jackson Dart, if he's the guy, should be able to beat him out. Now, the question is, do you protect Jackson Dart because you want your team to maybe develop and improve a little bit? I don't know. But if Russell Wilson starts week one, it's just a matter of time before Dart's in. And if Dart ends up not playing this year, that means maybe they picked the wrong guy. At some point, they need to see what he can do in 2025. And the sooner, the better. And if he truly is the guy that they think he is, he should win a fair competition. And that's the other factor to keep in mind. Regardless of what the team wants to do, ownership, front office, coaching staff, the players will have a say in this. And if they see that Jackson Dart is dramatically better than Russell Wilson, they're going to demand that Jackson Dart play because they want to win football games. That is a very important factor that gets overlooked far too often. What does the locker room want? Because if you start defying the wishes of the locker room, you have a problem on your hands if you're the coach, the GM, or the owner. Last one. Just the facts. I am 62 years old, born and live in the Twin Cities. If I live to be 100, will I have witnessed a Vikings Super Bowl victory? Mr. Just the Facts, let me give you one basic fact. I don't own a crystal ball, but based upon the 50 years that I have been closely following the National Football League, based upon all the things I have witnessed from the perspective of the Minnesota Vikings, they will have many competitive seasons between now and the time you turn 100. They will have many playoff appearances. But when the chips are down, when the pressure is the highest, when it matters most, they will once again reach into your chest, rip out your heart, and show it to you. And then stomp on it. And then put it back in, and we'll do it again. So maybe, Mr. Just the Facts, you and I will be hanging out somewhere either very high or somewhere very low when the Vikings finally win a Super Bowl. And my son or grandson or great-grandson will be at my tombstone with the perpetual solar-powered Aaron Rodgers saying, don't waste your time reading crap like that, plus whatever else we put on to that endless loop, watching the game. And finally, if it ever does happen, before the earth implodes, finally, the Vikings will win a Super Bowl. But I have a feeling, just the facts, we're going to have to live to be a lot older than 100 to witness it. That's it on that happy note for today's edition of PFT PM. The plan is to do it every day this week, every day next week, and then on Monday, July 28th, Christopher David Sims will be back. PFT Live will be back. Football will be back. Can't wait for that. Until then, you get your fix here every day, and you check us out around the clock at profootballtalk.com. See you back here on Tuesday. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.